Well, we're gonna look at 5 dysfunctions of a team. Okay, when you get into a team, supposedly this hook or this game activity is to highlight that when we come together with a common goal, normally you find yourself getting into some trouble, some problems, some conflict. Okay? So there will be dysfunctions. What are they? And how are we going to overcome them? And that's exactly the book of Patrick Lencioni is all about. Okay? And praise God, we got hold of a video where he is actually sharing with us the 5 dysfunctions of a team. So we're gonna watch a video for about half an hour, 30 to 40 minutes, discussing what are the 5 dysfunctions, and we're gonna process it. Okay?
Before I get started, I have a confession to make, like so many of the speakers do here. I guess when you come to a Christian church to speak, a confession doesn't seem so odd. And I'm Catholic, so you know. And I need to get something off my chest. You see, as I was preparing to speak today, I was very nervous for this past week. And you might think that's normal, but for me, I don't generally get nervous. I feel very blessed that I like to speak. I'm passionate about this. Earlier this year, I spoke at West Point in front of 1,000 cadets. It was incredible, and their families at a formal dinner in front of generals and military brass, and I wasn't really nervous. And I speak in front of corporations, and I speak in front of universities and nonprofits, and usually I don't get too anxious or nervous, but this was different. And I couldn't figure out why until I finally dawned on me that I have never in my life spoke to such an important audience, because you in local churches really are doing the most important work in the world. And there is just no doubt about that. And so my nervousness comes from my desire to, in some way, if I could in some way help you do better in those churches, working with your people, building teams, then that's what I want to do, and that's my prayer today. Now, the other reason why I was nervous is because they told me, given the size of the audience and all the satellite sites out there, and I want to send out my shouts, as they say on MTV, I think, to my homies in Walnut Creek, California, at Walnut Creek Presbyterian. Yay, Walnut Creek. That was cool, huh? The other reason why I'm nervous is because they said I couldn't really do audience interaction. See, I'm a consultant at heart, and I like to ask questions of the audience and have them ask me. I like to get distracted. Anybody here done the Myers-Briggs? Show of hands here in South Barrington. Yeah, okay. So I'm an ENFP. Any ENFPs out there? Yes. Wow. So the prayer of the ENFP is, Dear Lord, please help me to focus more on, oh look, a bird, on the things. And that is totally me. So because I don't have any audience interaction, I have to stick to my script and present this linearly, and it's going to be tough for me. So here's a free book. If you could throw that at me if I drift too far, chuck it at me, because I'm going to drift. So I'm kind of nervous about having to do that. I have to admit, I'm a little nervous too that in front of 36,000 Christians, I'm going to use a curse word once. And so, here, you throw a book at me if I do that, okay? All right. So now that I've gotten that off my chest, let's get started. Teamwork. Someone said something funny. Share that with me. What I'm going to talk to you about today is about leadership and leading teams. And while leadership is so important that we can lead large congregations and nations if we're presidents like Karen was talking about, but what I'm really going to talk to you about is leadership in the context of those people that report to you. The people that are on your team. Because that, to me, is so much of what leadership is about. You know, I talk to CEOs sometimes, they're like, yeah, I like leading, I like giving speeches. I don't really like to manage my team, though. I think they should do that themselves. And I just think if we abdicate that, I mean, if George Bush does not manage his cabinet and his staff, he's done. No matter what kind of a speaker he is. And so what I want to talk to you today is how to build teams and how to be leaders of your staff teams. Okay? Now, the first dysfunction of a team, let's just dive right into it, is the absence of trust. And you can turn in your booklet into page, I don't know what page, 6, thank you very much. Oh, 26, even better, 26. Yeah, thank you. See, I can interact with the audience. Page 26 in your book, the absence of trust. Now, when you first hear about this, that's the first dysfunction of a team, you might say, no duh, you know, like the absence of trust. And also you might think, ooh, this guy's from California and my office is dangerously close to Berkeley. And so like, oh, we're going to talk about trust. We're going to hold hands and get naked and sing songs. All right, you know. Oh yeah, somebody's like, yeah, getting excited. Michigan, it's Michigan over there. You know? Yeah, Michigan. But what I'm talking about when I talk about trust is something very specific and very practical, and that is vulnerability-based trust. As leaders of teams, we have to generate trust on our teams by helping people get comfortable being vulnerable with one another. That means people on a team have to say they're sorry, I was wrong, I made a mistake, I'm bad at that, I need your help, you're better than I am at that, I admire you. They have to be human and real and vulnerable. And yet as leaders, we're certainly not taught this. I mean, you know, it's like, don't let them see you sweat, you know? And as pastors, I can only imagine these people are looking up to you, not only for guidance in management, which is part of your job, but for spiritual guidance. And the thought of being vulnerable in front of them is pretty daunting. You know, I once worked with an executive team that had a vulnerability issue. Not at the leadership level in this case. But they had one person on their team. And this was an amazing company that had this all-star group of executives. They had lots of funding, a great product, really everything in the world going for them. But they had this one executive on the team who just couldn't seem to get that. And one night, at a dinner between off-site days, at a 2-day off-site, they had some wine, which is, of course, the great elixir of truth sometimes. And she picked up her glass after a few of them and said, let me tell you guys something. We've been talking about trust, but I've been married to my husband for 10 years, and I've barely learned to trust him, so I'm not going to be trusting you guys anytime soon, if ever. And we were like, oh, you know? Okay, so the CEO and she and I stepped outside after the dinner and said, this is the problem. This is the issue, because if just one member of the team has trouble with trust, it really hurts the entire team, because we would go to their offsite meetings and I would be a facilitator. And whenever we'd be getting into an issue, this one person would speak, and whatever she said, people learned not to comment on it at all. The conversation would grind to a halt. It would be uncomfortable until somebody changed the subject and they moved on. Because they realized if they ever commented on anything she said, all that she was going to do is defend her position. There was no use challenging her or even putting out another point. Because one member of a team can hurt the dynamics that much. Now, I want to be very careful here, especially in this environment. This CEO didn't go out and say, all right, you're fired. You know, I don't think you should go to your management team and go, yeah, trusting, not trusting, bye-bye, trusting, not trusting, trusting. Because we have to work with people to help them understand the importance of this. But ultimately, after months of working with this person and trying to get her to open up and be more vulnerable, she couldn't do it. She had to manage her out. You saw that conversation. We're going to talk more about that in a little bit. The next offsite meeting I attended with that team after she had gone, it was amazing to watch the dynamics. They got into issues. They made faster decisions. They made better decisions. People didn't hold back purely because they had one member of the team who previously couldn't trust who was gone. It was like watching a whole new company. This is so critical in our organizations. And yet the leader has to go first. Oh, let's go back. We went ahead too far. Can we go back to the previous slide? You jumped ahead of me there. Okay, or not. We're talking about the role of the leader is to be vulnerable. The role of the leader is to be vulnerable. Oh, you're not even looking at that, are you? Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. Thanks, you guys. All right. Oh, look, a bird. So, oh yeah, Willow Creek, here we go. So, the role of the leader is to be vulnerable first, though. The leader has to set the stage by being vulnerable and open first. I once worked with the CEO of a company, a famous company that you've probably heard of this guy. The company struggled and didn't succeed. He moved on. He's someplace else now. But he really hurt the organization by not being vulnerable. And here's the story I tell that kind of demonstrates that. I heard years later about this. He went to Asia on a conference on economic development. He took with him his chief information officer. And this woman, this chief information officer, she had a master's degree in economic theory. She was fascinated by economics, and the conference was about economics. So she went to this conference to go to the sessions and to really take part in it. She thought it was very interesting. He was a technology guy, and he went to give a speech, and it was a marketing thing, kind of a boondoggle. And he didn't really get into the conference. On the way back to the airport, they got in the taxi cab, and she started to explain to him what was going on in Asia from a macroeconomic standpoint. And he interrupted her and said, no, that's not it. This is what's going on. And he started to lecture her. And she told me later in confidence, she said, Pat, that's the day I realized I could never be smarter than him at anything because he was the CEO. And so many leaders, the question I have to ask you is, can your people be smarter than you? Can they be better than you? Can they have skills that you can look them in the face and say, I admire that in you, I want to be more like you in that way? And it can't be like, gee, I'm glad you're good at accounting because I hate doing that, you know. It's got to be something that you really admire, you know. And as leaders, we have to understand the power of that, because people will follow a leader into a fire if they're human and they're honest and they're vulnerable. But, huge but here, you can't fake it. Do not fake it. You know, I give this speech a lot and the CEO's like, yes, I will go back to work and be vulnerable on Monday. Yes. Maybe I'll even cry, you know? And it's like, no. It's better to be to struggle with it than it is to fake it, because if you fake it, you always get caught ultimately, and then you lose your credibility. And I don't have to talk to you, there's so many public examples of that in politics and in televangelism, and then people go, I don't think they're really truly sorry. Or I don't think they really think it's a weakness. So this is one, do not fake it. If it's not painful in the moment to do it, it's not real. It's that moment when you say something during a meeting and you go, oh, I think I was way out of line. I don't want to say that. That's that level 5 moment, as Jim Collins talked about, where you say, I screwed up. I am sorry. Trust is based on vulnerability. We as human beings don't trust people that can't be vulnerable. But why is trust so important? Because let's just all trust one another. Well, trust isn't in itself a good thing. But the reason why trust is so important, let's put that slide up there or go to the slide in your book. Because without trust, we are prey to the next dysfunction of a team, and that is we will have a fear of conflict in our organizations. We will have a fear of conflict in our organizations if there's not trust. Because why in the world would a person engage in unfiltered, passionate conflict with someone if they didn't trust them? I don't think you should, because you might very well get burned. Trust is critical for a very pragmatic, practical reason, because that's the only way you get your people to weigh in with one another. Now, I'm talking about constructive, ideological conflict here. The debate, passionate debate over issues, not personal issues. When I speak to audiences like this, I often say, so what kind of organizations do you think have the worst, ugly, mean-spirited, the bad kind of conflict? And people say the answer that I was always looking for, like nonprofits often do, and universities. And lately I've gotten a lot of people saying, I think churches sometimes struggle with this. And it's like, really? And the reason why is because churches hire people who are not very nice. So, what we have to do, no, that's not it at all. Of course it's not it. Nonprofits don't hire people that are like meanness, and either do universities or churches. It's because so many times when that issue of conflict comes up, we think, I can't disagree. I can't passionately debate with this person. I can't make them uncomfortable because they're a volunteer, or we're doing the Lord's work, or we're enlightening young people's minds. So I should just let that go, and I'll just agree to disagree in my own heart. I won't say anything to them. I won't make it uncomfortable. But when you do that, suddenly there's this dissatisfaction that's fermenting in your soul, and eventually it comes out in a really unproductive way. Like, you go to a meeting and you smile and you nod, a guy's giving a presentation, you don't think it's very smart, but you don't tell him it's not good, and then you leave and you go, that guy's really stupid. How much better is it to say, I think that's not a good idea? And in these organizations where we're here to do great work, conflict is actually critical. Okay? And certainly, Christ did not avoid conflict in his life. He didn't seek it to humiliate people, but he didn't try to placate everyone. And just like this conversation that we saw here today, like, we need to be having that conflict up front. Now, culturally, though, this looks very different from one organization to another, from one culture to another. You know, if you were to go to Japan and you were to go to a meeting and you were to propose an idea that the Japanese members of the team just hated, do you know what they would say? They'd go like this. They suck through their teeth. That's a good sign. Hi, yes. Could be a problem, but yes. Which is why Americans come back and go, oh, I think we got a deal. A couple details, and of course there's no chance at all. Of course, you go to Italy and you agree on everything but the color of the font on the contract, and they're giving you one of those. You know, they're like, yeah, and they're screaming and shouting. And because in Italy, you disagree on a little thing and you're screaming. In Japan, you don't say no. Even here in the United States, I love working with people on the East Coast. You know, and I saw a cartoon years ago, which I'll have to edit for today, and that showed, what? A guy in Los Angeles on the street in the first frame of the cartoon, and he said, good morning. But the bubble said, you know, heck with you, so to speak. And then it showed the guy in New York that said, heck with you, and the bubble said, good morning. You know? And so every church represented here, every organization here, you have a different culture of conflict. It might be because of the location, because you might be in Michigan, or somewhere else. Yay, everybody else. Or Walnut Creek. Oh, they're not here. Okay. But you've got to understand your culture. The key is not that you're Italian about it, or Japanese about it, or New York, or LA. The key is this. Are people on your team holding back? Are people choosing their battles? People shouldn't choose their battles on a team. If the first three things that somebody says you disagree with, you should explain that. Choosing your battles is for political situations, not for teams. Not for teams. Now, there's something else I should say. You know, I'm Italian and Irish, so, I mean, no matter how hard I try, conflict is just in my blood. And so my team, we have dysfunctions ourselves back at work at my company, but this is one that we're decent at. Like, we'll go to a restaurant, and we'll get into a business topic at lunch, and I'm pretty oblivious, as I explained before, about what's going on around, you know, but we'll get into this business topic, and evidently we'll get very fired up about it, because that's how I am. But it's just about the topic. And then after the lunch, we'll be leaving, and one of my staff members will say, did you see those people sitting behind us? I'm like, no, why? Oh, they were looking at us. They thought we were going to, like, come to blows. And it's like, really? And it's like, because a good team looks funky to people on the outside. It's like, wow, they're wacky. It's like, no, they just know each other well enough to disagree and to be passionate without there being any residual damage. So if your team doesn't look wacky, there's something wrong. The last thing I want to say about conflict. Yeah, your team will be fine then. You guys will be just fine. The last thing I want to say about conflict is this. The most important place where conflict has to occur is in meetings. Now, so many of the executives I work with, I'm writing a book about this right now, so many of the executives I work with say, gee, if I didn't have to go to meetings or manage people, I'd really like my job. And to me, that's like rolling into surgery and having the surgeon turn to the nurse and say, gee, if I didn't have to operate on all these people, this would be awesome. Can you imagine? If I didn't have to preach and do service, oh, this pastor gig would be great. When you're a manager, and that's the thing, you're pastors, but you're managers as well, and leaders, going to meetings is what we do. And the problem isn't that we go to too many meetings, it's that we go to too many bad meetings. Okay? One of the reasons, I missed that comment, but it was a good one. I missed another one. Oh my God, it's got out of control! Okay, you've been a great crowd. Thank you very much. So, meetings. I used to be a screenwriter for fun after I got out of college at night. I just did it for fun. And one of the things I learned in screenwriting is something I've applied to meetings. And that is what makes a great movie or a great screenplay is conflict. At the heart of every story, whether it's a foreign film that's very sophisticated or an action movie or a lighthearted romantic comedy, every great movie has conflict at its core, something that you care about. It's interesting, you're anxious about how it's going to get resolved. And we learn this in junior high. It's man versus man or woman versus woman, man versus nature, or very often man versus himself or woman versus herself. There's some fundamental tension and conflict that we care about, which is why we don't turn the channel or leave the theater. We're interested. And think about it this way. If I said to you, hey, would you rather go to a movie or a meeting? You'd say, what are you, drunk? I'd rather go to a movie. And yet I actually think meetings should be more interesting than movies. Because they're about 2 hours. Think about it. Your average staff meeting might be 2 hours in length, right? A movie's about 2 hours. And yet a movie is completely passive. There's no interactive nature to it. And it's irrelevant to your life. I mean, if the hero wins or not, you still got to go to work the next day or you got to do your thing. But a meeting is, one, it's interactive. You get to actually interrupt people and say, hey, what about this? And more importantly, it's relevant at the end of the meeting. Probably you're going to have to do something different as a result of what was decided. So movies are passive and irrelevant. Meetings are interactive and relevant, and we hate meetings. And that's because we kill the conflict. Our meetings should be passionate, interesting, anxiety-laden, and they should matter. And now, do you know the most important part of a meeting? What's the most important part of a movie? If it's 2 hours in length, what's the most important section of that movie? The end. Who said that? How many people said the end? You're all wrong. But I used to think it was the end too. What's the most important part? The beginning. I'll just pretend that everybody who said something said, yes, the beginning. The first 10 minutes of a movie, if you're writing a script, it's the first 10 pages. Because the reader and the viewer, in the first 10 pages, they decide whether or not they like it, or the first 10 minutes of the movie. After that, you interpret it in light of your first response. It's like, well, this is really boring. This scene is pretty good, but it's a bad movie. Or if you like the first scene, you'll go, later on it can drag, and you go, well, it's kind of boring now, but this is an awesome movie. The first 10 minutes of your meetings, ladies and gentlemen, have to be great. If you're a leader of a meeting or a manager, ask yourself, am I scripting these meetings? And I don't mean in a manipulative way. Am I drawing out what's interesting at this meeting? So let me give you the example of the most boring meeting I could ever imagine. A budget review. Now, my apologies to all my financial friends out there. But I mean, okay, we're going to review the budget. Now, here's how they usually begin. Ladies and gentlemen, turn to page 48 in your books. Last year's budget books. Fred, could you read down the left-hand column and compare the numbers to this year's numbers? And you're just going, oh, God. You're like, I wonder what these people look like in their underwear. Oh, you do it. You know you're doing it. And people are gone. The rest of the movie is terrible. So how would you make that interesting? Well, how about this? How about, okay, everybody, I know we got to spend 90 minutes on this budget. It could be tedious, but I want you to think about this. Our competitors, and in your case it might not be that, but for business, our competitors would love us to get these numbers wrong. Our employees are counting on us to get it right because their jobs depend on us allocating these resources correctly. And you know something? If we fail to pay attention today because we're bored, 9 months from now we're going to be sitting in our office cursing ourselves for getting it wrong. We're going to lose the credibility of our staff, and we're going to make it easier for our competitors to hurt us. So why don't we all sit on the edge of our seats and pay attention for the next 90 minutes because we have to live with these decisions for a year. Not an Academy Award, but a little better than turn to page 42 in your budget booklets. Meetings aren't bad. We as leaders need to be better at them. And it's about conflict. It's about conflict. Okay. Why is conflict so important? Because I'm Italian and Irish and it's just fun. No. Conflict is important because it enables us to avoid the next dysfunction of a team. And the next dysfunction of a team is The lack of commitment. You see, if people don't have conflict at meetings, if they don't passionately debate a decision and weigh in, they're not going to really commit. They might nod their head at the end. They might acquiesce. But 6 months later, they're going to come back to a meeting, and you're as a leader going to say, didn't we already decide this? And they're going to go, well, yeah, but I was never really on board. We have to get good at getting our people to have conflict so that at the end of that meeting, when we have to commit to something, we know it's not a passive commitment, it's an active one. Because you know something? Human beings are immensely reasonable. Of course, we knew that when we were employees, but now that we're in leadership roles, it's like these people are unreasonable. But the truth is, and I see this all the time, if you can get your team to stand on their seat at some point during a meeting and weigh in on an issue, and you can genuinely consider that, at the end of that meeting, when you have to make a decision and break a tie because there's not a natural consensus, and there's almost never a natural consensus, even if they disagreed with you, if you can explain your reason and you can have heard them and considered their input, 19 and a half times out of 20, they're going to go right along with the decision. Because human beings do not have an innate need to have their way. They have an innate need to have their way considered and factored into a decision. And by not having conflict, we are begging them to commit passively and to re-raise those issues over and over again. So I encourage you to help people, and we're going to talk about this in a little bit, where you're going to do a little self-assessment in a few minutes. And we're going to talk about how to get people to do this. But conflict is important precisely because of commitment. It's just critical. You know, and here's a common example. It's very administrative, but it's interesting. So I was working with an international pharmaceutical company. Actually, I won't say where it's based. You'll figure it out. Anyway, so, oh, that darn bird is back. Shoot. So, the CEO decided, you're not doing a very good job with the book. The CEO decided that they couldn't fly business class anymore when they traveled, which was a big thing for them because they were always traveling business class and they were traveling a lot. So, and everybody in the meeting just said, okay. Nobody argued with the CEO. Nobody said, are you kidding? That's going to demoralize people. Well, half of the team went out and told their staffs no more business class travel, and they took the brunt of it, and there was a lot of flack, but they held it. They said it's the right thing to do for the company. The other half of the executives went out and said, forget it, just do it, whatever you want, I'll approve it. So people were like getting on airplanes together from different departments, one going to the front and one going back to my seat by the bathroom on American, you know, and it's like, what are you doing? Well, my boss told me I could do this. Well, my boss, I mean, think about the credibility loss on just an issue like that. How often do we fail to get real commitment from people? Now, before I go on, I want to say something about, a lot of people ask me how gender affects leadership in teams, you know. Anybody here read the book Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus? Yeah. I've never read it, but I've had parts of it read to me out loud. My wife is here. My wife is here. Anyway, I have had the opportunity, I think because I did a lot of work in high tech when I started my career, and in my career I've had 8 bosses that were men and 8 that were women. And I've worked with a lot of female executive teams in my offices. We've a lot more females than males actually. And I can tell you this, gender is so far down on the list of differentiators, if it's even on the list. I do not see a truly gender-specific difference between male leaders, male team members, female team members. Oh. Well, I could have said women were better. you know. But I think it's one of those things that we sometimes get distracted with, like, but isn't it different when you work for this? And, you know, I'm looking for it because it would be interesting to tell you during a speech. Here's what I've found. And I don't think it's there. So for whatever that's worth, I just kind of want to lay that to rest. All right. Why is commitment so important? Why is it so important to get people to fundamentally commit to something? It's because if we do not, the next dysfunction of a team becomes a problem. And that is, there's an avoidance of accountability on the team. And when I talk about accountability, I'm talking about peer-to-peer accountability, not leader-to-team accountability. The best form of accountability you have, sir, where are you going? Okay, that's it. Sorry. Anybody else feel free to get up, anything. The best form of accountability we have on our teams is peer-to-peer accountability. When peer pressure is powerful, and when you have a team at your church, and people, they do the right thing precisely because the thought of letting down their peers is so distasteful, that is one of the most positive things you can have in your organization. Ironically, it's the leaders that are uncomfortable holding people accountable, who don't do it, who get called on to do it by their team. You see, if I'm a leader of a team, and I'm holding people accountable, I enter the danger and I do that, people will realize, well, he's going to do it anyway, I might as well tell him. And so they'll do it peer-to-peer. Years ago, the 49ers traded for a player from another team. And this is when the 49ers were a great team. And Bill Walsh was the coach, and those years. And they had this amazing culture of teamwork and commitment to the organization. And so they traded for a player from another team, and at his first practice, he sprained his ankle, so he couldn't suit up for his first game. And he didn't even show up. He wasn't on the sidelines. And the other player, everybody noticed it, but the general manager didn't talk to him, and the coach didn't talk to him, and the owner didn't talk to him. The players went to him and said, listen, if you do that again, we will make sure you're gone. And that, to me, is very efficient and very effective. Now, they all knew that ultimately Bill Walsh or the general manager would do it for him if they had to. But it's so much better if team members can turn to one another, and it's not usually punitive like that, and just say, listen, I think you can do better. Or what's going on in your area? We have to get peers to hold each other accountable. But again, as I say, the leader has to be willing to do it first. And let me tell you this is my temptation as a leader. I do not like to hold people accountable. I'm a wuss. Okay? That's not a curse word, is it? Got to check the approved list of, no, it's not on there. Oh, only halfway to go, I'm almost there. So, I don't like to hold people accountable. And you know something? Among the senior executives I work with, I'd be curious to know how Bill is about this. But among the senior executives I work with, this is the hardest one for them. The higher you go up in a company, I find that the more reticence there is to hold people accountable. On the exterior, they look like they're accountable, but they really don't like to do it because the people you have to hold accountable are your peers. Really, these are people. Bill has to hold Jimmy accountable. Jimmy sits down the hall from him. They're buddies, they're friends, they admire and respect each other. It's one thing to think about, well, that person's 20 years my junior and they're just out of college. Yeah, I guess I can tell them what to do. But to tell someone who's your age or general socioeconomic status or whatever it is, that they're not doing something right is hard. A couple stories to illustrate this. I once worked with an executive, a famous executive again, who was the CEO of a company and the president and chief operating officer too. He had all those titles. And he was frankly tired of being the president and chief operating officer because he liked strategy and vision and liked to give talks and marketing. He didn't want to be involved in the day-to-day operations, so he said, I'm going to hire a chief operating officer and a president. So after a while, he was looking for this person. One of his direct reports, who I will call Fred, who was not very well liked by his peers, Fred started to tell everyone on the team, I'm going to be the next president. So people were pretty upset about this and concerned. And finally, one brave soul went to this famous CEO and said, excuse me, I have a question. Is Fred going to be the next president? And the CEO said, no. He said, okay, second question. Did you know he was telling everybody that? The CEO said, I had no idea. Third question, one more. Are you going to tell him to stop? And this is what he said verbatim, and I hear this all the time from CEOs. Oh, I don't have the time and the energy for that. I got a lot on my plate. I don't have the time and the energy to deal with stuff like that. I don't know about you, but hey, Fred, yeah, it's a CEO. No, you're not going to be the next president. Yeah, you're kind of ticking me off that you're telling everybody that. Something bad's going to happen to you if you don't stop, buddy. Yeah, have a good day. Bye-bye. What was that, like 8 seconds? Kind of energizing, in fact. Who's tired? But they don't do that. Well, here's one that happened to me years ago. I was working in an organization. I was reporting to the CEO of a company. I was in charge of leadership development and communication, and I had my annual budget review with the CFO. And for those CFOs that are out here, and I know I've met a few of you, this guy was your prototypical curmudgeon-y CFO, not like you guys. But anyway, so I went into the meeting. He was a very outspoken guy. He said to me right off the bat, he said, Pat, before we get started, I just want to tell you, if it were up to me, I'd fire you and your entire staff and put the savings to the bottom line because I think the work you do is silly. So it was a California company, so I thanked him for sharing. Thank you for sharing. And then I said, Fred, they're always named Fred, apologies to Freds out there. I said, Fred, this is a problem. You got to talk to the CEO about this because these are his programs. And for you, the second or third most influential person in the company, to be publicly deriding them and criticizing them is like flushing our money down the drain. You should talk to him about this and have this out. He said, I'm not going to talk to him. I said, okay, then I am. He goes, fine. Next day, knocked on the CEO's door. I said, Mark, I talked with Fred yesterday, and he thinks all this stuff I'm doing for you is stupid. And he goes, oh, that's just Fred. I said, no. This is a problem, you know, because he's pretty outspoken about it, and you guys really need to work this out. I mean, they set this 5,000 person company, they sat next door to each other, this much plaster and wood. All you had to do is walk around there and talk to him. He said, you know, Pat, I don't have that kind of time and energy, essentially. I got Wall Street to worry about. I got bigger things on my plate. What do you notice about both of those examples? It wasn't holding people accountable for their numbers. I mean, even though the slightly wussy CEOs will do that, I mean, you know, it's like the numbers are the numbers. It's holding people accountable for their behaviors. Oh, we don't like to do that. In fact, I would say that most of the leaders I work with would rather wait till somebody's numbers fail so they can do it in a quantitative fashion, I don't know what's wrong, I just see your numbers are going bad, than actually enter the danger with them ahead of time and say, the way you're treating your people, it's not going to work. Or I've noticed the way you're organizing your work, you're going to fail. As leaders, we have to have the courage to enter the danger with people. This skit right over here, which, oh my goodness, I read the script for this ahead of time. They sent it to me. I was like, man, these people are talented. And then I watched it, and I was getting tears in my eyes. And I thought, there's so much truth in that skit. And I love that line when he says, why didn't you tell me? And he says, well, it would have been hard. And he says, and this is easy? You know, it's like that Fram oil filter commercial, you know. You can pay me now or pay me later. It's a lot more expensive later. And yet it's human. I mean, I hate this. I do not like to do it. And I'll talk to you about how to overcome that maybe in a little bit. Now, a lot of people ask me, if you look at the model, what's the difference between conflict and accountability? Aren't they the kind of the same, though? You know, like if you're willing to have conflict with people, aren't you willing to hold them accountable? And not necessarily. Because see, I'm the Italian-Irish father here. I'm very comfortable. I have twin boys that are 5 years old. And oh my, I miss them. So, dang. Thank you. See, the guy with the, give your book to him. Give your book to him. So someday, and I'm dreading this day, like 11 years from now, they're going to be driving, because they're 5 years old, and they're going to come home from a date, and the curfew is going to be 10 o'clock. And I'm going to meet them at the door, and we're going to have it out, because that's how I am. Where have you been? Did you hear 10 o'clock? What do you think? You're just ignoring me? And they're going to say, Dad, it's unfair, blah, blah, all this stuff, and we'll have it out. And then so we'll have the conflict. And then at the end, they're going to say, so am I grounded? And I'll go, nah, get out of here. And I know what you're thinking, buddy, you're in for a long life. Because I got to fix this. But that's the thing. I don't like to hold people accountable. I don't like to say, that's got to stop. I don't mind having a theoretical conversation with them and getting passionate, but when I have to draw the line and say, you can't do that anymore, and this is the consequences, I don't like it. It's hard. Okay, why is it so important to hold people accountable? Because without it, we fall prey to the ultimate dysfunction of a team, which is inattention to results. And you might think, well, if you're not paying attention to results, then what are you paying attention to? God bless you. Well, you have, hey, where is everybody? Anyway, it's a Christian conference. The guy sneezed. I'm sorry. People will pay attention to other things besides results if you're not holding them accountable. What they're going to pay attention to is their own career development, their own personal interests, And here's a tricky one, their own departments. You know, I worked with Los Altos Baptist Church in California. Hello there, everybody. And anyway, so they came to one of my team sessions, and it was interesting. They were talking about, well, this guy's in charge of the school, this guy's in charge of outreach, this guy's in charge of team worship, this guy's in charge of services, this guy's the financial guy. And it's the question I asked for them is, what's your number one team? Is it this team or is it the one you lead? Because if you think about it, the team you lead, you probably hired them. You got to pick them. You spend a lot of time with them. You're very loyal to them. They're loyal to you. And so many of the executives I work with, I say, is it the results of this collective team at the top of the organization? Is that team number one? Or is team number one the one that you're the papa bear or mama bear of back in your department? This is such a critical issue to struggle with. An organization that is infected with teamwork in the right way has to make the team at the top number one and has to cascade from there. Otherwise, people are going to come and be like at the United Nations and they're going to argue or lobby for their own interests. So even though you think, but I'm loyal to these people and the people in the school are my first responsibility. No, the first responsibility is the team that you're a member of. You know what the advantage of being Bill Hybels, or other than getting to sail a lot, and being Bill or the leader of an organization at the very top is that your number one team is actually the same as the team you lead. Everyone else, though, has to prioritize being a member of a team ahead of being a leader of a team. And that is tough. That is tough. Scottie Pippen is coming back to Chicago. Am I right? Right. Years ago, when Michael Jordan retired the first of 3 times, what people often don't realize in retrospect was that the Bulls were still probably the best team in the NBA, right? I mean, and I don't want to go through the players. I could, but I'm not going to. But they had this amazing group of players. Pippen was now their leader and their star. And they had Phil Jackson as a coach and everything else. Well, at one point in the playoffs that year, you remember this, they were playing the Knicks, and I think there was 10 seconds left to go in the game, and they were tied. Phil Jackson, the coach, called the team over, Pippen, the leader, and all the players, and said, here's the play, and designed a play. And the ball was going to actually go to Tony Kukoc to take the last shot. Do you remember, what did Pippen do? Sat on the bench, refused to go on the court. You know, the announcers were like, did he foul out? They were looking at their sheet. Did he get hurt? I didn't see him get hurt. No, he sat out. He said, if I don't get to take the last shot, then I'm not going out there. And you know, what a beautiful thing for him to do. I wish every executive team I worked with had the audacity for a person on the team to say, hey, it's not about the team, it's about me. I mean, it was so clear. I mean, it's like most times they hide it. But he was like, no, really, I'm not going to play. I don't care if we win. I mean, it's about me. Kukoc made the shot and they won the game, but that's irrelevant. The point is we have to ask ourselves on our teams, is it about the results we're trying to achieve? Or is it about how we feel about ourselves or how our own career is developing? And you know something? It's always the bottom line, folks. The beauty is in a church, the bottom line is whatever you're trying to achieve. It's not about money. But you all have to be results obsessed as well. Willow Creek did not get built by people going, Bill didn't say, gee, this is pretty fun and I hope we get a lot of people here. He said, we will measure our success by the souls we save and the people we attract. He is relentlessly results focused. The results just happen to be the most important thing there is. So people often think, well, that's only money that's the bottom line. The bottom line is whatever you measure success as. Okay. We've gone through the 5 dysfunctions of a team. And now what I'd like everybody to do, both here in South Barrington and out there around the continent, if you will, is I'd like you to turn to page 28. Am I right? 28? Is that the assessment? I'd like you to take 3 minutes, 15 questions to fill that out, and then to tabulate the results on the next page over. And then we're going to come back and kind of survey the audience here.
Okay. Nakatulog ba kayo? You like it? Though he was talking about dysfunctions in the context of most of the time organizations, but I think we also see those dysfunctions in our small groups. Okay? We see those dysfunctions in our small group. What are the 5 dysfunctions again, just to have a quick review? 1 is absence of trust. And if you have absence of trust, it's difficult to get into the next one, it leads to the next one, fear of conflict, okay? And then lack of commitment, and then avoidance of accountability, and then inattention to results. Okay, so what we would like to do right now is for you to group yourselves into 6 to 8, okay, in a group, not more than 8, okay? So because we would like to have about maybe, ilan ba tayo ngayon? 100 plus? Okay, so 6 to 8. So will you please find your group already? 6 to 8 people in a group, and we're gonna process this. We're gonna look at the 5 dysfunctions and see how they are in our small groups today. Okay? So 6 to 8 people in a group. So we will have more than 10 groups. Okay? So please find a group now. And this is what we will do. We will assign later on what you will do, but there are 5 dysfunctions. Okay? 5 dysfunctions. Each group will tackle 2 questions. Dalawang question lang per group. What are they? Well, you will be assigned 1 positive and the others will be negative. So I will assign later. Siguro I will divide the group from here. If there's more than enough group, others will talk about the positive and the others will talk about the negative. What are they? For example, for the positive, I will assign 1 group to discuss number 1, or maybe 2 groups to discuss number 1. What does a team with trusting members look like? In other words, if there's trust in your small group, what does it look like? Okay? And then the next question, of course, other groups will talk about number 2, number 3, number 4, and number 5. So isa lang. 1 dysfunction per group. But the second question is this. What factors contributed and led to this kind of a team? For example, if positive, let's say this group nila Ruth, positive, there's trust. What does it look like? And what factors led to a team that has trust? What contributed? Okay? What led to a team that has a lot of trust? Are we clear? And then sa negative naman, on the negative part, of course, in the absence of trust, what does a team with an absence of trust look like? Kung sa small group nyo, walang trust, people normally don't trust each other, or mababa yung level of trust, what does it look like? And then, what factors will contribute to low trust? Okay? So, are we clear on the discussion? So, I'd like to assign now, these 2 group, okay, will be positive. Positive yung kanina. Trust. Pag may trust, anong itsura and what factors will lead to that? And then, the group at the back, number 2, pareho, positive. And then the group there, number 3, number 4, ito, number 4, and then number 5. Okay? Are we clear? Sa positive kayo, ha? Positive. Positive. Clear ba, everyone here? Number 1. So you kopyahin niyo yung number 1. Yan. Trusting. These 2 groups. Then the group at the back, may another group pa ba dyan sa likod? Are you 1 group also? Okay, sorry ha. So there's, yung group, 3rd group, and the 4th will be number 2. Then kayo, number 3 na kayo. 3 and 3 at the back. And then yung mas maarap kayo, number 4. The one at, yeah, number 4 also, and then number 5, both of you. Okay? Kayo, negative number 1. Okay? Negative number 1 also. And then at the back, I think there's more than enough. Number 3, all 3 groups, number 1 kayo, no? All 3 groups, number 2, negative. Okay? Number 2, negative. And then, these 3 group, number 3, negative. 3 groups at the back, 1, 2, 3, 4, number 4, negative. And then 3 groups again at the back, number 5, negative. 5 5 dysfunction. Inattention to results. Okay? So please write down the names and your dysfunction or your question. Okay? We'll give you 10 minutes to discuss. Okay? List down what does it look like. Small group, you're analyzing a small group. Okay? Positive, I hope you're done copying the question. This is the second question. What factor contributed and led to this kind of team? And this is the negative. Okay, negative. If you have problem, please approach us, but we'll give you 10 minutes to discuss. Okay? Okay, by the way, the one in the workbook is a sample, but that is mainly a analysis of an organization. Hindi small group ang context ng nasa workbook ninyo. They may apply to your small group, but there should be more. Okay, so always think, sa small group natin, pag walang trust, sa small group natin, if there's fear of conflict, how does it look like? What will happen? Okay? So small group yung context. Okay, time's up. Now, what we would like to do now is to call out every one of you, one representative, but please, in the interest of time, para mabilis, just read one or two top, okay? Sa question 1 and then question 2. Just read it, no need to explain it. Okay, no need to explain it so we can get everyone. So let's start first with dysfunction number 1, the issue of trust. Let's begin with the negative muna. Let's start with negative. Jonathan, can you start that group? What does it look like and what factors lead to low trust? Just one or two, read it.
Magkakaroon na airtime ko, airtime.
Okay, for our group, we got negative number 1. The question that we had was, what does a team without trusting members look with absence of trust look like? The top one that we had, there is no relationships personally because there is no sharing personally. So meaning, when they say na they don't trust, ano explanation? Sorry, no explanation. Okay, next. What factors contributed and led to this kind of team? It's the leader's example as well. The leader is too guarded and so the members are guarded.
Very good. Okay. One more negative. Ikoy, your group, please. Shallow relationship. Next.
What does a team that fails to commit look like? Our highest score on that is high absenteeism. Pag walang commitment, masyado mataas ang absenteeism.
Sorry, number 3 ba kayo? Oh, sorry, yung number 1. Dito ba? Sorry, Ikoy.
It's okay, Pastor.
Number 1.
Birthday mo eh.
Frequent absences, people hide their feelings. What factors contributed and led to this kind of team is lack of chemistry and the presence of a critical person.
Okay, so too many absences. So ibig sabihin come and go ang mga tao. Alright? Some more positive? This group?
Okay, practice accountability or transparency and practicing confidentiality. And then the factors, example of the leader or facilitator and work of the Holy Spirit.
Alright, so there's confidentiality and accountability. Next group, positive ngayon ha? Presence of trust.
The question is, what does a team with trusting members look like? Our answers are, they are hot.
Hot.
Yeah, H-O-T.
Okay.
Letter H, honesty. Tells the truth even it hurts. Gives factual information. Not afraid to give rebuke and receive reproof. Gives constructive criticism. Letter O, openness. Wow. Team members do not hesitate to share their personal concerns, shortcomings, failures, weaknesses, and frustrations. And letter T, transparency. Hindi plastic. Totoong tao po. They are not afraid or ashamed to show their ito, true selves and their struggles. That's all.
Factors, wala.
Yeah,
Oh, quickly,
yeah,
quickly.
we have factors. Relationship has been built among themselves and acceptance. Common
Very-
goals, purpose.
Okay, very good. Okay, one more sa positive. Sino pa nasa positive? This group? Okay, one more positive.
What does a team that holds one another accountable look like? Number one, trust po.
Trust muna. Positive. Sa likod? Dalawa lang ba rito? Okay. Alright, so let's process it muna, no? I think those were very good. So what we need to do in order to have effective team or our small group is to build trust, since we know already yun yung dysfunction. Now, you will be given actually a reading material, a handout later on. There will be tools that you can use on how to build trust. Okay, self-explanatory naman yon. How to build trust in your small group. So tools, activities you can use in your small group. But let's just focus mainly on your job as the leader in building trust in your small group. Okay? Nasabi na ito, number one, be vulnerable and entrust yourself. Ikaw mismo. Your reputation, your welfare, your dignity to your group. Okay? You model it. Ikaw muna. Okay? That's why sabi ni Patrick Lencioni, be vulnerable yourself. When you're open and honest, it builds trust. Then foster genuine care for one another. Okay? If people know that you care and in this group they are accepted, maganda yung nasabi kanina, may acceptance, then most likely there will be trust in the small group because they know you care for them and that their interest is what you are thinking of. Their welfare is your concern. Number 3, develop humility and openness in your group. Okay? Humility and openness in your group. Number 4, practice and enforce confidentiality. One of the factors that may lead to low trust in our small group is when they open up and things leak out. Okay? Pag merong chismis, gossip. So practice and enforce confidentiality. And of course, you start off by sharing little by little muna. Okay? Hindi muna yung shocking. Okay? Or yung medyo di ba? So that it builds the trust also. But if somebody is already ready to open up, don't stop them. Number 5, develop confidence in your people and value their contribution. Okay? Value their contribution. Knowing if they know that their input, okay, their opinion is valued, then most likely they will put their trust and confidence in this group. Because again, the next dysfunction is, if there's low trust, most likely they will not engage in a healthy debate. Now, the conflict that is the next one, fear of conflict, hindi ito yung personal na conflict. Ito yung conflict of ideas that we're gonna talk about. Okay, people, if let's say you're planning, you want to do something, and meron nang sinabi, meron na nagbigay ng idea, you don't want to engage in a conflict with that idea because, mahirap makipagbanggaan dito. Okay, there is low trust. So let's look at the second dysfunction. Okay, second dysfunction, let's start again with the negative. Somebody said number 2, negative muna. All right, at the back. Please, the mic. And can I hold you accountable? Very quick, okay, and very short.
What does a team that fears conflict look like? It's a super quiet group, conforming externally, but at the back, they gossip, they backbite, and they backstab. No great ideas come out of the group. What factors contribute and led to this kind of team? It's also the leader. We're reminded of the law of the lead by John Maxwell. The leader is not open, does not trust his people. And also the team members are highly sensitive because of our Filipino culture to save our face and avoid conflict.
All right, very good. Another negative, please. Okay, at the back.
What does a team that fears conflict look like? So number one, not much discussion. No deep relation. Number two, no deep relationship develop.
Okay, factors?
And the factors, fear of criticism, number one. Two is the conflicts not well managed.
All right, now let's move to the positive, number 2. Okay, at the back. How does it look like naman if there is a healthy conflict or positive outlook in conflict?
Despite the conflict, they agree to disagree, but they confirm to search for answers until they find the right answer. Minimize politics and separate personal differences, but focus on issues.
Okay.
Factors, they know each other and understand difficult members, even though they come from different culture, upbringing, education, social class, age, experience, and personalities.
Okay, there's understanding of one another.
And the leader is an effective conflict facilitator who knows his team members.
Very good. Okay, are you listening to those answers? Very good answers. One more. Positive also. Next group.
What does it look like? First, there's openness and encourage. There's openness, and we encourage openness to everyone, and then it lighten each other's burden because you open up. And then the factors, the non-judgmental attitude of each member, and then of course the initiative of the leader to become open.
All right. So I think it's very clear that when there's openness, in there's engagement in conflict, in discussion, we arrive at the best ideas. Okay. So let's look at some ways you and I can build. Okay, so you and I can approach conflict productively or positively. Okay? Number 1, welcome team members to disagree with you. Okay? I think being the leader, ikaw ang magmo-model nun. Do you welcome people when they disagree with your idea? Okay? So that's humility also. Give every suggestion a chance to fly. People will not engage. People will not open up. They will fear conflict when they say something and immediately you kill the idea. Okay? And the leader is most vulnerable to do this. Mali yan. Hindi magandang idea yan. That's a silly idea. Okay? So don't kill the idea. Give it a chance. Number 3, allow team members to engage in conflict and lead them to work on a resolution. Some leaders are not, of course, lalo na kung bagong leader ka lang, sometimes we're afraid of conflict in the group. Pag magkaiba na yung ideas ng members mo, sometimes we try to avoid that. We should allow that to happen, but facilitate this conflict or this debate in leading them to come up with a resolution. This is healthy so that in the end, you will come up with the best idea. And that's what number 4 is all about. Always remind team members that conflict is necessary to bring about the best ideas. Okay? And again, if they are involved, ano sabi ni Patrick kanina, if these people are involved in the discussion, if their ideas are heard, their opinions count, what will happen next? Okay, they will have high commitment. If not, pag lagi nababara, okay, they will not commit. Sige, kayo na lang. And many times, that's what happens in our team, in our small group, or in our pastoral area. Okay? So, let's move to the next one. Dysfunction number 3, lack of commitment. Nasaan ang number 3? I think kayo na, ano, Ikoy? So, let's start with the negative.
First, Pastor, the team that fails to commit look like is that there are high absenteeism. People don't really go. And there's a consistent attendance, meaning on and off din na punta nila. What are the factors that contributed and led to this kind of a team? First, there's no clear vision and purpose, what they should commit into. And number two is that there are unresolved conflicts in the group which makes them dilly-dally in their attendance.
All right. Another? Lack of commitment?
We identified refused to participate in group projects or other stuff, and makes a lot of excuses. No? Factors contributing to it is the leader himself may not be that committed. That's why the members are not also committed, and probably there's still lack of trust and fear of conflict.
Okay, very good. Narinig niyo yun? There will be lots of excuses. Okay? May project kayo, may bridging event na kayo, hindi ako pwede. May kayong gustong gawin, hindi ako pwede. Maraming excuses. And normally, those are signs of lack of commitment. Any more? Meron pa bang number 3 dyan, negative? Okay? One more?
Well, for our group, on what does a team that lacks commitment look like, there's no ownership of goal, agenda, or the plans of the group, as well as, second, the lack of enthusiasm. And then on the factors that contributed and led to this kind of team, there's no harmony, and no interactions or no openness.
Okay. Very good. No harmony and no interaction. Okay? So, about the positive, this time let's look at the positive naman. If people are willing to commit, mataas ang commitment level, nasaan yung positive? Number 3. Okay? Share your ideas with us.
What does a team that commits look like? Ministry projects are easily accomplished, easily resolves personal conflict, easily encouraged to be involved in church various ministries, and always present in meetings. What factors? Members are willing to participate, have learned to accept each other's strengths and weaknesses, have been taught to willingly sacrifice their time and resources. They love the fellowship because they are accepted in the group.
Okay, very good. Okay, one more. Positive. Nasaan ba yung number 3? Yan.
Always present, on time, punctual, available for the needs of others, and growing in quantity and quality. Factors contributed, has the passion to grow and to love others, and vision and result-oriented.
Okay, very good. One more, meron pa bang positive dyan? Number 3? Wala na? Alright, so let's look at what you can do. Of course, constantly inspire your members towards ownership. Okay? If there's lack of commitment, then we need to inspire our people towards ownership. And the first step to that is to allow them to engage in discussion. Now, what can we do as leaders? Number 1, take personal responsibility for the decision, especially if it turns out to be a wrong one. Now, of course, in the discussion, there's openness. But eventually, who will decide? Who will decide? The leader. Okay? And that's okay. And you can still win their commitment if, after you made the decision at may nangyari, sinong sisisihin? Yung leader. The buck stops with you. People will have low commitment if the leader, after going through that process, will blame the member for the wrong decision the team made. So, take full responsibility for the decision made. Number 2, make sure the decision is cascaded down to the rest of the team. Okay? And normally, and as we have heard that last week, when we talk about vision, when we talk about this mission that we have in CCF, we have a problem of cascading it down to others. Okay? So leader, make sure that you do that. You tell your people to cascade it down. Number 3, gather commitment from the members. At the end of the discussion, when there's that healthy debate already and people are engaged, then you ask for a commitment. So this is now the decision. So are we all on this decision? Okay, so you gather their commitment. You get their commitment. Let them say yes to the plan. And then, of course, inspire ownership of vision by modeling it. Okay? by modeling it. Ikaw mismo must be passionate, must be committed, so that they will follow you as their leader. Okay, so if you have decided to go for a bridging event, and how to do it, when to do it, who will be your target group, then you must be there on the front line to model ownership of the vision. All right, number 4. Dysfunction number 4. Ito yung pinakamahirap for me. How about you guys? Avoidance of accountability. Okay? If there's low accountability, number 4, low accountability, how does it look like for a small group? Nasaan yung number 4? Okay, so please.
There's absence of healthy relationship. There's low spiritual growth because the group cannot help a person who is struggling with problems and issues. And it's difficult for the team to excel and maximize their potential and talents. It promotes inhibition to open up and share personal things. Okay, what factors contributed to this kind of team? Foremost, the leader is not accountable to his members. So parang no role model of accountability. The leader's lack of trust to empower members. And the leader is teaching and not facilitating. He does not allow people to create an environment for sharing and openness.
All right, so excellence is not achieved. That's one of the problem. But low accountability, low ang ating results. What else? Another negative? Oh, wala na. Sino ba yung number 4 dyan? Anymore? I think Jimmy, is your group number 4 also? Number 5? I think at the back. Ayan.
Our group has found out no commitment and no growth. And the factors, there's no clarity of goals and objectives, and lack of trust and confidence among the member.
Okay. Meron pa ba dyan? One more?
Shallow relationship, absenteeism, and no interest in the group. The group is divided, no group dynamic or boring meetings, no mutual respect. Factors that contributed: lack of trust among the members, fear of conflict. The leader failed to establish trust among the members.
Okay. Bakit nga ba? Bakit yung most of us are afraid of accountability? Anybody? Rejection. You're afraid of being judged. Okay? To be exposed. Baka bumalik sa'yo, bumirang. Ikaw din eh. Okay? Pride. Okay? And culture. Ang hirap, bilang Pinoy. Oh, madam. Very low self-esteem for the person who is... Okay? Right, positive naman. If there is high accountability, number 4. Okay, so that group.
Okay, what does a team that holds one another accountable look like? Everyone would be performing. Poor performers would be encouraged to perform better. We quickly identify the problem areas in the group. There is synergy. There is transparency. Individuals' potential are realized, and there is respect among members.
Very good. Factors?
What factors contributed and led to this kind of team? Conflicts in the past were resolved. Members make their commitment to the goal of the group. They have worked well in the past. There is acceptance and encouragement among members.
All right, so people perform, people reach their potential. Even those who are not performing will be motivated, and these are very good picture when there is accountability. Okay, any more? Okay.
what does a team that holds one another accountable look like? Members check each other regularly without being told by the leader. They rebuke lovingly and are not defensive when they receive rebuke. So what factors? Leaders, they model accountability, and leaders set the tone for openness and rapport.
All right. Meron pa ba dyan, Jing? One more? Wala na? Okay, so let's look at, to build, not to avoid accountability, exercise healthy care frontation. Okay? In other words, when you confront, there should be love. Okay? And there should be care. Okay? It's a coin word by our materials developer. So paano natin gagawin yan? Very simple, dalawang suggestion, and you heard some of them. Challenge the team to serve as the first and primary accountability mechanism. Okay, tell your small group that accountability will not just come from the leader, because that is already expected. Okay? But challenge them that accountability is primarily the job of the rest of the group. Okay? So give it to them. Number 2, you divide the team to smaller groups for mutual accountability. Okay? So it may be difficult in a larger group, so you do the buddy system. Okay? Simulan mo sa small scale. O sige, kayong dalawa muna. Okay? Mag-partner kayo and be accountable to one another. Or 3 of you, be accountable to one another. And this is what Pastor Peter does to the pastors. He divide the pastors to about 2 people, and do accountability. Okay? So that's what we can do. And in the paper that I'm going to give you, there are, again, tools that you can use also in your small group. Number 5, inattention to results. Okay? Saan ang negative? Number 5. All right, Jimmy?
What does a team that does not focus on the results look like? There is no exceptional results on the team, no unity or no teamwork. Focus more on assigned tasks rather than the set goals. There is no cooperation. It has a tendency to lose members who are really focused on team achievement, and there is no clear direction. What factors contributed to and led to this kind of a team? Of course, there's lack of commitment. They are not highly motivated. There's absence of trust, avoidance of conflict, and members do not really want accountability.
All right. Any more? One more? Let's hear from one more group.
No growth, no direction, no achievement, no commitment, no cooperation, unable to fulfill mission and vision. What factors contributed? No confidence in the ability of the leader, lack of motivation, no chemistry, lack of appreciation, encouragement from one another, no clear goal, mission, vision, selfish motive.
Okay, so our vision will not be achieved. There will be low morale. What will happen to a member in your group who is actually high achiever, but he is in a small group where there is inattention to result? What will happen to that person? Sayang, ano? Yung kanyang potential will not be realized. So a number of things will happen. If a high achiever is in a small group that is not achieving, either aalis siya or yung kanyang potential will not be achieved. Okay, so this is something that we need to look at. There may be some people who are already leaving our group because they are high achiever and there's lack of attention in terms of results in our group. Positive. Pag-positive naman. All right.
Okay. They are growing exponentially and general. Saan ba po ako titingin?
Sa camera daw, sa camera.
Okay. Okay, they are growing exponentially and generational, are also known as multiplying, and making a godly impact in their families and workplace and in the world. and what factors contributed and led to this kind of team. They have embraced the mission and vision of CCF. They keep on equipping themselves. They attend GLC and apply their learnings, of course. And the members are faithful, available, and teachable.
Very good. Oo, kasi nandyan yung mga yung asawa ko nandyan. But really, groups that are really focused on achieving results, there will be multiplier, they will multiply generational, geographical, and all of that, and fulfill the mission and vision that God has given us. One more.
Okay. The members are involved and excited to participate in the activities of the group. There is a clear goal that promotes unity and harmony among each other. Each member is willing to contribute anything for the good of the group. And next is successful projects and activities. What factors contributed? An energetic and committed leadership. Leaders promote trust in the team.
All right. Okay, so how do we do that? Okay. Unrelentingly focus on objectives and outcome. How do we develop our team so that there will be focus in terms of results? Okay, let me give you 3 suggestions. Number 1, celebrate the win. Okay, whenever you see or whenever your group achieves something, you need to celebrate that. Okay, you celebrate the win, you give recognition to the winners. Okay? And this is again to highlight that here, even the Lord, okay, di ba? Good and faithful servant. That's what will happen if you and I are focused on results. He will one day recognize and the winners, and He will celebrate the win with us. And number 3, enlarge their vision, especially if they are high achievers. Okay? So that there will always be focus on results, then you need to cast bigger vision in your small group. Pag nagkaroon na siya ng small group, high achiever siya. Pero maybe this time you need to cast the vision of creating D12s out of his D group. Okay? So this is how we do that. So why don't we give all of you a big hand for your contribution? So these are the 5 dysfunctions. I hope that when you go home as an assignment, you will do the assessment of your own small group and see whether or not there are dysfunctions. Again, later on, we will explain more of how you can use the tools on that. Okay? So in the meantime, we will have a break, 10 minutes break, and then please come back for session 4. Thank you.